My name is Calum Best. My dad was George Best, one of the greatest footballers who ever lived.
I cannot believe you got my dad tattooed on your chest. That is brilliant. They got the eyes and everything, didn't they?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Oh, mate.
Waiting to receive was mighty Best. He simply walked the ball into the net.
He was football's first real celebrity, but he was also a chronic alcoholic.
Your dad was drunk every single day for 30 years. Never knowing your father sober was a really hard part.
As the son of a well-known drinker, I want to find out how much parental drinking is affecting millions of children's lives today.
He was on 2 litres of vodka and like 3 litres of cider a day.
My son used to grab hold of the architrave to the door, handles. Don't want to go. Don't want to go, don't want to go. And the social worker pulling at him and pulling at him.
It's also my personal journey to confront the impact my dad's addiction still has on me today.
I find myself a lot saying, all right, laugh about it because you won't cry, you know?
My father started playing for Man United when he was just 17. By the late 60s, he'd become a football superstar, but developed a drinking problem along with his celebrity lifestyle. At 28, he left Old Trafford and met my mother the following year.
I smile every time I watch this footage.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps.
Nice, isn't it?
After 6 years of marriage, the drinking became too much and my mother left, taking me to live in America. From then on, I mostly saw my dad during holidays to the UK.
Oh, look at you.
Terrified.
Oh.
The entrance of a superstar.
In 1988, I even joined him on the pitch at his testimonial in Northern Ireland.
You didn't know what to do, did you?
Oh, of course not. I'm kicking the ball. I'm trying. I'm getting lost. Where am I?
Yeah. Dad, wait for me, Dad.
No, it's cool though. I remember that. That was probably one of the earliest memories. Actually, that is the earliest memory. I got to be about 7 there.
Yeah.
And I remember running around the pitch terrified.
Yeah, of course you were.
Yeah, it was great though.
Oh.
This is new and difficult territory for me. I had an alcoholic father, but my mother had an alcoholic husband. I want to know what life was really like.
I know we've never really talked about it before.
Oh, we're going to talk about it now, though, aren't we?
I guess so.
This is tough. Talking about this kind of stuff is very emotional. It really is a drain on your psyche.
I know. But, you know, I kind of like getting it out there and talking about things that I've never really talked about. And to talk to you, I mean, now 28 years later, I've never really kind of asked you questions.
Your dad was drunk every single day for 30 years. And I didn't want you to see the downward spiral that your poor dad was on. You were busy chasing father, trying to develop a relationship, which developing a relationship with an alcoholic is impossible to do because they are inherently the world's most selfish people.
Yeah.
So that you could never have done. And I always have this picture of in my head when I think of you and your father, because you were any little droppings he'd give you, you just soak them up. And there's this picture of your father loved his fans, and they loved him. So there's Dad, there's the back of Dad reaching up to the fans who are reaching down to George, and there's hands going towards each other, right? And there, in the bottom of the left-hand corner, tugging on George's trouser leg, is you.
Wow, it's pretty full on, to be fair. It's
But
like,
that's what it was like for you.
Yeah, I know.
You do know that, right?
Yeah, I do. Sometimes when I think about it, I get emotional, but in the big picture, I can kind of smile and laugh because that's what I've taught myself to do.
Well, you can, but there are so many children out there who suffer. There are so many kids out there who are going through that stuff now, and their father's not famous, and they have got nowhere to go, nowhere to turn.
Yeah, but that's also a hindrance for me. I hear what you're saying, but for me as well, because everybody comes to me and talks to me about my dad, and it's lovely that they have so much accolade, but it's like, the fact is, everyone's telling me about my dad when I'm still trying to figure out who my dad was, you know, and who he was to me. You know as well as I know is that I would be so excited to see him, and he would be so excited to see me. When I got there face to face, and we didn't know how to deal with it, you know? He would go on even harder of a bender when I showed up, you know? And that always tripped me out, and I could never really talk to him about it, and this is why I've never really talked about it, because I can, whenever I'd think about asking him a question or finding out, why are you drinking, why aren't we doing this, you know, it'd shut me out.
I think every family has somebody who drinks too much in it, so they all understand what you went through to a certain degree, but never knowing your father sober was a really hard part. You know, that stuff hurts.
My mother showed me some old family photos.
Now this one when you were a newborn, he said to me, let me take it, I'll get up and give him his early morning feed.
And then he dropped me on my head.
Oh,
He dropped me on-
oh,
don't.
love him. He did try, God bless him. Look at
Oh,
that.
my.
Look at that, 4 generations, look at
Oh
that.
my
Do you remember
God.
that?
Wait, so that's me, my dad's dad, and my dad's...
4 generations at best.
Jesus, I've never seen that before. I just wish that this could happen now.
Now, look at that face there.
Yeah.
And just a few years down the road, see what happens?
I remember this time, though.
Yeah.
This I remember when I came over, I was about 11 or 12, and I knew my dad was drinking at the time because he would go out in the same tracksuit every day.
Yeah.
You know, he wouldn't really care about his appearance.
Yeah.
I don't know why I remember that, but I remember he would wear the same 80s-looking tracksuit, the full-piece shell suit,
Yeah.
and the beard was growing, and
Yeah.
it wasn't really giving him story.
No.
And I remember that the alcohol used to make his fingers peel.
Yeah, he had psoriasis, really bad psoriasis, do you remember?
It was just all alcohol-induced.
What a waste.
Thinking about growing up, one of my strongest memories was coming to Manchester with Dad when I was 11.
Thanks.
We stayed here at my dad's favorite hotel. Coming back, I'm reminded of how unpredictable and confusing being around an alcoholic can really be.
We went to Old Trafford to the game, and I remember walking around with a Man United jersey on with Best on the back, and I was so proud, and it was the first time I'd ever been to Old Trafford, and it was such a good day. And then we came back here, and I had a football signed by everybody, but I was still running around this lobby playing with it for hours and hours when my dad sat here with all of his old football mates drinking. And then I remember it got towards late evening, and my dad just disappeared somewhere. I sat around waiting for him for a couple hours, and then he didn't show. And I had my mom's phone number in the States in my pocket, and I went out to the payphone, called her. She had to call the front desk and get them to give me a key. I went up to the room and waited for him, and then it got really late, and I fell asleep.
I was left overnight, not knowing where my dad had gone.
I woke up the next morning, called his room. He wasn't there. Went downstairs, hung out in the lobby for the whole day, and then he came back in the evening. At the time, I didn't think, oh, my dad's disappeared because he's pissed. Now I can look back and think of that being one of the earliest memories of something bad happening, and that bad thing happening because my dad was drinking. From then onwards, the more I noticed how serious the problem he had was, you know? And then is when I started seeing press about it, and then I started hearing people talk about it, and then it all started clicking together that, you know, my dad was like a serious alcoholic. Yeah.
I have to believe that my dad wouldn't have abandoned me if he'd been sober. Understanding what adults do when they're drunk is tough when you're a kid. The girls I'm meeting at London Zoo have all had an alcoholic parent or relative. They have support through a self-help group called Alateen. Anonymity is one of the group's core principles and allows them to speak openly.
When I was about 11 years old is when I kind of realized that alcohol was affecting my dad. Was there any kind of things that were going on that made you realize that alcohol was a problem?
Obviously, as I started to get older, I was sort of going around to friends' houses, and I'd see that none of them were making their own dinner. None of them were making sure that their mum or dad was in from the pub and in bed or on the sofa or somewhere safe. I think it sort of started to click with me then that there was something wrong, but because I idolised my dad, I didn't want to admit it.
Quite early on I found out that it was a problem. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was called, sort of thing. I knew it was like something with the drink and everything, but I didn't know it was called a sort of like alcoholic. It was a disease and everything.
Yeah, it was my uncle. About 2 years ago, we found out that he had died from it because he was just so heavily drinking.
Alcohol misuse has deep and far-reaching effects. It has hit these girls in ways I could never imagine.
What kind of things did you have or did you do maybe to kind of help you cope with the kind of chaos that was going on at home?
So I didn't have anyone to talk to, I didn't know who I could trust, and I turned to other things to help me try and cope with it. I mean, I turned to like food, and food became my best friend sort of thing. I was self-harming at a point where it just got too much sort of thing. You just couldn't see any sort of pale arm. It was all sort of red lines and streaks and everything.
Me and my mum always used to live in flats, so whenever she couldn't pay the rent, we used to just do a runner and move somewhere else. The biggest, hardest thing is that I've missed so much school. To be honest with you, I don't really know anything. So, because of my mum not being able to afford to stay in one house, I've had to move school, so I haven't been able to learn properly. So now my life is completely messed up because of her.
My mum's my only family now because I don't see my dad. I haven't seen him for 3 years or something now because I didn't want to take it anymore because I couldn't handle the unpredictable behaviour and like some of the abuse I got and stuff like that. And it was like really hurting me a lot.
Some of these girls experimented with alcohol themselves to try and understand the appeal.
I tried drinking to see what the effects were, why this thing was so amazing and what it did. And it resulted in me throwing up. I thought it was disgusting. I thought, how can you do that to yourself on a daily basis and really enjoy it and seem to love it so much when it has that effect on you and it causes you to do things like that to your family? I remember one Christmas play, I was a part of the sheep or something, and it was a really small part. It was in a nativity, and I only had the one line, which was like bar, and I got to say that one line, and I really wanted him to be there. And he promised me the morning when he'd just woken up, he was sober, he promised me he'd be there. And I said my line, he wasn't there. And he sort of came in right at the end when we were doing the bows and went, "That's my girl up there," and made this big scene. And then he like fell over and everyone turned and looked and then looked at me, the scarlet sheep. It was like, I wanted the dad, my best mate's dad, who was sitting there at the front with the video camera. Not the dad that came in and flopped on the floor and started screaming things about his daughter being on the stage.
It was shocking to hear what these girls have gone through, but being able to talk openly has clearly helped them. When I was growing up, talking like this would have felt like I was betraying my dad somehow, and many children feel the same. Joe's mother is a recovering alcoholic, so she knows what children of problem drinkers go through. She is also a volunteer at a helpline run by the National Association of Children of Alcoholics. They take on average 100 calls a day, some from children as young as 7 desperate for help.
What kind of problems do they usually kind of call in with?
It really varies. Quite often they don't really know where to begin. They know something's not right at home. Their mum, dad, or both parents may be drinking, and they can be living in chaos. Like there'll be a lot of anger between both parents, or the anger will be aimed towards the children, and they just don't know what to do or what's going on.
Do you find that it's pretty much usually kept in the family as secrets, and when they come and talk to you, it's the first time they talk outside of the family?
Yeah. Definitely. I think about 58% of callers haven't spoken about it to anyone else, and this is the first time that they're talking about it to someone.
Do you find that the kids also maybe feel guilty when they talking about their parents?
Yeah, for sure, because they love their parents, and their parents love them as well. It's not an issue of love, and quite often I think they feel embarrassed to be talking about their parents in what could be perceived as a negative way.
As Joe and I talk about feelings of guilt, I realize I still have doubts of my own.
Sitting here now, just even having this conversation, I'm thinking to myself, am I doing the right thing? Like I'm questioning myself, going, whoa, like, do I want to be talking about my dad's drink problem? Like, really? It's a bit private, although it was public, because it was all over the press and people knew my dad was an alcoholic, but this is my personal experience with him.
You describe sort of feeling guilty, and I think it is sort of an uncomfortableness, and I think a lot of that has to do with sort of other people's attitude and what they'll think of you by talking about it. But to try and change people's perceptions of alcoholism and to understand it yourself can be really helpful.
Many families work hard to keep alcoholism hidden, but 7% of adults are dependent on alcohol, and 1 in 10 children have a parent with a drink problem. It's no surprise then that addiction affects people from all walks of life.
Reminds me what my dad said one time. Alcoholism can affect pretty much anyone. It can be a successful businessman, it can be a mother in Belfast, or it could be a world-class footballer. Looking at some of these headlines here, it's like, for example, this one says, "One drunk a minute is admitted to casualty." It's like, it doesn't really even shock me, to be fair. It's shocking, but for as long as I can remember, drinking's been a problem in the UK. Everybody out there will deal with it differently and have different opinions on it because it's such a massive subject, but it's such a hidden massive subject.
There are very few projects in the UK that support children and families affected by alcohol, but Children in Need helps fund one of them. This mother and son recently completed an 8-week program run by the charity Action on Addiction. They've been working with Cinzia, a psychotherapist, and have agreed to tell me all about it. But because the boy's father can be violent when he's drunk, they want their identities hidden.
The impact of, drinking was, it was a very, very big impact. I mean, there's been an awful lot of threats made. It's not safe.
What is it you're drawing there?
Just about alcohol in general. I don't like it, not really.
The idea is to help them come to terms with their experience of alcoholism and find new ways of handling day-to-day challenges.
The program is designed specifically to give the children a voice in terms of what it's been like for them living with addiction. Family members find it very difficult to acknowledge that they need support in their own right. I mean, often when we said to them, "Well, what about you?" "Oh, I'm okay. I don't need help."
I think it's absolutely vital for the family to get help as well.
Among other things, they develop what is known as a first aid kit for times of crisis.
So do you mind if we maybe fill out one now? Should we throw out some ideas? Do you have one to start?
Find a safe space.
Have somebody to phone.
Somebody to phone?
Yes.
I think healthy ways to deal with
anger, recognising it, I think.
Recognising it. So how would you deal with it in a safe way? Could you just give us an example?
Go on your PlayStation.
That would have been my choice.
We talked about talking to friends or other people. Is it okay to ask for help, outside of the family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. I think we've filled that. I think that's all really good.
Yeah, it helped me realise that I'm not just the only person who has a parent with alcohol abuse, and I don't bottle everything up anymore. It's like me finding my voice and coming out with the stuff what I want instead of not me just being pushed aside, but now I can stand up and say no.
And has it helped you to speak to everybody, or is it just you're talking about the addicts in your family, or is it?
Oh, to everybody. Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
It gives you sort of some control of things, so you're not the victim. It's empowering.
Children alone can't change the environment they live in, and so we have to work very much with the adults to help them to look at how change can be made.
And again, that's the big issue too, isn't it? Is that change is possible.
And change is possible.
At 15, I had no idea that change was possible. Adapting and fitting in around my dad felt like the only way to be with him. And by the mid-90s, if you wanted to see George Best, even if he was your dad, then the Feeney Arms in Chelsea was where you'd find him.
Wow.
It's strange. This brings back the most memories out of everything, for sure. My dad's place was across the street.
The bar used to be right in the center here. He had his permanent seat right there. I used to sit next to him. We used to drink, play cribbage, watch the football. We'd obviously go other places, but when it comes down to being raised, he raised me in this place. As a young teenager, I remember you'd get really pissed, and I remember at the end, I'd have to carry him home. Luckily, he only lived across the street. It was just how it was, you know? I didn't know anything different. I didn't know that, oh no, Dad, go back to being sober, because there was never kind of a sober time. Sober times maybe early in the morning, but I mean, as long as I had known my dad, our relationship was me, him, and alcohol.
At 19, I moved to London to be closer to my dad and started joining him on regular drinking sessions.
I could have sat with him anywhere, but you know, this was his local and he loved his drink, so we sat in the pub and drank. Then it got to a point where I knew my dad was really ill and I didn't want to drink with him anymore because I knew it was kind of adding to fuel to the fire and what would end up killing him.
That was when I began to realize that my dad would never stop drinking.
I think the biggest thing is a lot of people say problem drinkers are quite selfish because they don't think about the effect it has on other people around them. And I think, wow, I drink, I'm actually known to drink quite a bit. Selfishly, I think it only affects me, it's stopped me from getting work, it's done quite a few bad things, but I still go out and drink. I don't think I have a drinking problem.
When parents choose drink over their children, the emotional and psychological impact is huge. Dominic is 17 and lives in Wakefield with his mother. At times, his mother's drinking has made him feel completely helpless.
I actually once walked into my mother's room, I found about 20, 30 empty bottles of vodka just laying across the side of the bed. And it scared me because I thought, how can anyone drink that much?
You say don't let me drink, but what can I do? I'm a child, so I depend on you. You can only stop yourself. So what can I do? I'm sorry now, I can't help you. I don't know how to. You say don't let me drink, but what can I do?
Dominic, how are you, Calum?
I'm all right.
Nice to meet you.
Dominic's parents separated when he was 12 and he stayed with his mother.
Okay.
Within a couple of years, her drinking had become a serious problem. Playing the guitar was one of Dominic's few escapes.
And we need to be upstairs for the guitars.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Are you still playing the bass now?
Not at the moment. I lost my guitars, 2 of which I sold when I just stopped caring about it all. And one of them I lost when we were evicted.
Why did you stop caring?
Everything seemed to just be going wrong. I wasn't going into school. I realised that my future was heading nowhere and I just thought playing guitar is useless. My mother didn't care about me or anything I did, so I didn't care about myself because when she was drinking, all she was bothered about was where the next bottle was coming from, where the next can was coming from.
When the family was evicted, Dominic lost his guitar, his home, and almost his mother, all on his 15th birthday.
My mother ended up being really ill, ended up going to hospital, which made it probably the worst birthday of my life. She was told that she had 12 months to live if she didn't stop drinking the way she was drinking.
Wow, so the doctor told you that the drinking meant that she had 12 months to live unless she stopped?
It's because she was on 2 litres of vodka and 3 litres of cider a day. She drank when she came out. She didn't seem to be bothered by it, but every time I went out, it was a risk to me. I felt scared of being out because I didn't know what had happened to my mum while I was out, or whether I'd come home and find my stuff out on the streets, ready for me to sleep there.
After this, Dominic finally found the strength to tell his mother how much her drinking was affecting him.
I realised, well, I'm going to have to do something about this, and I told her how I felt about it. Most of the time she'd just completely ignore me and not care what I said, but sometimes if I got her and she was in the right mood and she was sober enough, it'd actually get to her and she'd realise how much it was affecting me. And deep down I do think that's another one of the reasons why she went and got herself off it.
Dominic's mother successfully went through treatment and he now feels he finally has his mother back. But he still has concerns.
How is your mom doing now?
She can drink now and just stop drinking. She can have a drink on weekend and not need a drink next day. It's still a bit scary for me because I think when she goes out and has a drink, I sometimes, like, in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking what happens if she gets up in the morning and has another drink and it all starts over again.
Dominic invited me to visit Base Camp, a project that solely supports children of alcoholics.
Today we're doing a group work session on alcohol. We're going to ask you some questions and we're going to get the top answers. So it's a little bit like something you may have already seen.
It's like a safety net. I know that if it starts getting really bad again, that I can just call up and just talk and get my point across.
What are the main areas of life affected by a family member's drinking?
Do you have emotions, like the feelings, like what?
Emotion and feelings? You're saying depression goes in with mental health there?
Education.
Education you're going for, correct?
But then when they're away from the drink, they're completely different, so it's always like a two-side story.
All the stuff that's happening has not just happened to me, it's happened to other people. I felt less alone and more like just another person.
I want you to draw your drinker. I want you to draw the effects it might have on the body. Brain damage.
Yeah, well done.
So behaviours or the way they act.
Hell for leather, lathered, drunk. You soused, you pissed, you sunk. The jukebox now is drunk. Just along the way. Had a call last Saturday. Say I'd thrown my friends away. Reversed the charges on them all. I made a lot of calls. Is there a storm coming? Or are we just another shower? Is there a storm warning? Someone just...
Dominic and the others have all seen their parents drunk, and 40% of UK adults admit to drinking too much in front of their children. Some of these kids are even putting their drunk parents on the internet.
Wow, that's pretty dark. Can't be. It's not a nice feeling seeing your parents in a state like that, you know? Maybe seeing them dancing around, laughing, having a good time is funny, but seeing them, you know, in a real bad, dark way, that can really affect you big time.
Watching some of these really reminds me of my dad.
I had just flown over from Los Angeles. I think I was like 15, and as soon as I got into town, he went on a bender, which he usually did. I remember my dad came in the door just stumbling, just one of those, his eyes were everywhere and he was stumbling. And he's going, you know, you're not mine, you know, you're not my kid, you know, F you, you this, you that, you don't belong to me, you're not my kid. And I'm going, oh, Dad, no, Dad, sorry, Dad, I've just come into town. And then I stand up to try to like go towards him, and I remember he grabbed me by the throat, picked me up, literally picked me up against the wall. And I remember before that thinking, oh, I'm 15, 16, I can handle this. He picked me up against the wall and then just swung, hit me, laid me out on the floor. And I got back up, and I remember I started crying, and I was like, Dad, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, listen, I'm just here. I was waiting for you to come home. And he goes, you're not my effing kid. You're not my kid. Get out of here, you piece of shit. And then I remember the next day he was up earlier than usual. He was up at 9 straight to the pub to make sure he didn't have to address the fact of what happened the night before. I was too scared to bring it up because I didn't want to provoke some kind of anger. And he didn't want to bring it up because obviously I think he had felt quite guilty about it. And it just went on and it was never talked about again. That guy that came in and then gave me a hit wasn't my dad. He was taken over by brandy and by wine. The fact is, it might look like your mom or your dad, but you know, that alcohol, those bottles of booze have turned your dad or mother into a completely different person.
Violence is 6 times more likely in the home of an alcoholic parent, and you never forget those traumatic events. I need to understand the grip of addiction. How can booze become more important than your children? Sally is a recovering alcoholic and also a mother. She works as a care coordinator in Devon, supporting serious problem drinkers through treatment.
Hello, Calum.
Hello, Sally.
Williams, pleased to meet you.
Pleasure, thank you for having us.
Sue, please come in.
Thank you very much.
The care coordination role involves me going to people in their home. In a lot of cases, I will go in when the ambulance won't come anymore.
Really?
Or maybe the doctor has given up in despair and said, you know, I've done all I can for you, what do you expect me to do?
Yeah.
And there's a lostness about these people, I find, you know, and almost a despair, especially with the chronically addicted who, to them, drink is to survive.
Yeah.
We need to step in and help these people.
As well as helping others, Sally knows from personal experience what it is like to hit rock bottom.
I mean, it reduced me to being doubly incontinent in hospital wearing nappies like a baby.
Really?
Yeah. You know, it doesn't matter if somebody said to me, Sonny, you know, if you drink, your children could go for adoption. Is that going to stop you? No. You know, if you drink, you're going to die. Is that going to stop you? No. And for me, I think the book of Alcoholics Anonymous puts it brilliantly. There's a phrase in there, it says, he shall be at the jumping off point. He can neither live with nor without alcohol. He will wish for the end.
Yeah.
And that's it in a nutshell.
Oof.
Drink will become life itself.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for me.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it in other people that are suffering.
Sally's drinking became so severe, social services became involved with her family.
My son would be taken from me for 5 months at a time. And in those 5 months I would get sober. And those feelings of pain were unbelievable. I can remember a social worker bringing my son into the room, and I would have an hour with him in my home, and then he would have to go back to his foster placement. When that hour was up, my son used to grab hold of the architrave of the door handles.
Don't want to go.
Don't want to go, don't want to go. And the social worker were pulling at him, and the tears I've had over that.
I wanted to know more about how much Sally felt her drinking affected her son.
He does remember the pain of being separated from his mother. Certainly on his last placement in Stockport through the local authority, he talks about that even now, and I find that upsetting, that what he tells me that went on was, you know, for him was very upsetting, and there were times when he cried and he said to me, I knew where you were, I only knew you were down the road, and there were times I just felt like running out the front door and just running home, and that was hard. I'm upset now.
Don't.
I'll be all right in a minute.
No, I know you will.
It's not that I'm sad.
No, I know. It's just obviously it's thinking about the things, isn't it?
Shit I used to be, honestly.
Yeah, but you know what? You're better now, though. You know what I mean? You made that step.
And do you know what this feels like to me? Closure. I've just not realised until you said it earlier. I put closure on my alcoholism, but I've not put closure on me and Aubrey as a unit.
Although Sally still feels the pain those years caused, she does now have her son back and has been sober for 6 years.
So 6 years sober in May.
Yeah.
From my last relapse left me in the hospital. I was lucky to survive that relapse. I was very lucky indeed.
And that was 6 years ago, and the last time.
And that was the last time I drank.
To hear somebody like yourself that made a change, it makes me battle a bit, because I think, oh, damn it, why didn't my dad make that change? I still don't really know the answer to that, and I don't know, maybe scientifically, it could be that you can stop yourself, but then again, you know, some people say that, no, you can't. It's once it's there, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Your drinking is your responsibility, and nobody else's.
Got it.
Nobody else picks up the bottle, puts it to the mouth than the person with the drinking problem. And maybe, just maybe, you know, in your father's case, he didn't really want to give it up.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, I can understand that.
Yeah.
But the hope is, Calum, and the hope is that if we get the right treatment, people recover.
Yeah.
People get well.
I think the most important thing about meeting Sally was to show that you can be so ill with such a serious addiction, but you can stop drinking and you can change. That was a tough thing for me to accept, because it made me think, damn it, my dad could have chose to not drink. I almost don't want to think that he had a choice, you know, because then it would be easier for me to deal with. But to think that he had a choice, I'll struggle with that, because why did he choose to drink and not get better? Closure is definitely a massive part, but I don't know when and where closure is. I thought when my old man passed away, that might be a bit of closure, but still, I'm sitting here today, still trying to figure it out 4 years later, you know? Still trying to figure out what it was that happened, what was the addiction my dad dealt with, why did he not stop drinking, why was he addicted, how did addiction work? I'm still trying to figure that out, because I know I struggled with it, you know? Losing my dad, I struggled with it. I fell off hard. My whole life has been about trying to get to my dad and know my dad and be with my dad, and alcohol stopped me from doing that.
After 4 weeks of filming, I had so many questions about my dad going round in my head. I thought some answers might be found in Belfast.
When I come to Belfast, I feel closer to home, because this is where he's from, and this is where they love him, and this is where he's laid to rest, you know? So I do love coming here, because it makes me feel closer to him.
But coming here proved tougher than I expected. Worried about returning to his home, I did what my dad always did.
On the day before we were supposed to fly here, I was really anxious. I went out by myself for some lunch at a friend's restaurant, and I got there, and I thought, okay, I'll have a drink, and then that drink turned into 30 drinks, you know, and I went on a bender, and it's funny to think that it's almost turned around, that my dad used to go on benders when I came into town, and now I'm going to see where my dad rests, and I went on a bender because I didn't know if I could handle it. Doing something like this kind of brings it all back, you know? All those things that I said I've swept under the carpet, they're kind of coming back out, and I'm kind of addressing them, and you know, it's all signed, sealed, and delivered, but there's got to be a point where I just kind of stop thinking about it. There it is. Yeah, there it is. It's nice, that.
It's got to be tattooed on there last week.
Shut up. Let's have a look. I cannot believe you got my dad tattooed on your chest. That is brilliant. It's great though. They got the eyes and everything, didn't they?
Fantastic, yeah.
Oh, mate, good on you. Good on you. Yeah, well, we're going around looking at all the murals, but that's the best mural yet. You got it on your body. Pleasure to meet you, yeah?
Calum, gentleman.
Good man. Take care of yourself. Thank you. He always said he wanted to be remembered for his football, but I also have to address the fact of what my dad died from.
I wanted to go back to the house my dad grew up in.
Oh, wow. This is all kind of coming back to me now. I didn't spend much time here, you know. I only really spent time here when I came over with my dad, like real young age. But I think there's a pitch down here. He used to kick the ball around. And then there's the Craigie estate right next door. The last time I was actually at this house was the day of my dad's funeral, and it was raining, and these streets were just filled. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it there. The family home of soccer legend George Best, 3rd of April 2002. So that was before my dad even had passed away. He got ill originally, and then he was on the waiting list for his new liver, you know, so he was in and out of Cromwell Hospital for a lot of time, and then towards the end, he would go in, and then he'd be really bad one day, and then he'd be better for 3 days, and you'd go, okay, cool, now he's gonna recover, it's George, he's always gonna recover, you know? And then I'd get a call the next day from the doctor saying, today's bad, you know? And I'd go down and it'd be bad. And then it would go back and forth. It was like off and on, and then got to a point where it got really bad, and it was bad for, you know, about a week, and then it ended. It was tough. Probably the toughest time of my life, to be fair. It's quite surreal. It's just surreal being here, no one being inside, and like the house up for sale. It's just kind of mad. I guess I have a picture of it how it was last time, you know? Thousands of people around, all the family inside, and now it's just no one's here. This whole front yard had flowers and t-shirts and flags and scarves. The coffin was inside with all the family, and then it got carried out here and then placed into the hearse.
and it took us all the way up to Stormont, which is the government building where we had the service. I mean, the fact that the people line the streets from here all the way to Stormont, it's just amazing.
More applause and more tributes thrown. This was a city united in paying its respects to the most beautiful player of the beautiful game.
This lady from Belfast, born and raised, she wrote poetry. She sent my mother a poem, and I read it, and it just touched something, and so I read that out to at the service. Farewell, our friend, but not goodbye. Your time has come, your soul must fly. To dance with angels, find the sun, but how we'll miss our special one. You walked among us just a while, weaved your magic, made us smile. Your life, so full of light and tears, we lived it through the years. The golden days, they went so fast. The precious times, why can't they last? So many loved you, did you know? We were not ready to let you go. But stars from heaven are only lent, a gift from God, that's why they're sent. We won't forget our Belfast boy. You filled our lives with so much joy. Your star will shine now in the sky. Farewell, our friend, but not goodbye. It's still hard for me to accept that alcohol took my father's life. But some children have to say goodbye while their parents are still alive. Danielle is getting married next year, but her mother won't be there. Her mother's drinking got out of control when Danielle was just 11, and she still drinks heavily today. Hello. Hi Danielle, how are you? I'm Calum.
I'm fine, thank you.
Nice to meet you. Cool. So, big day.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Excited,
Are
very
you?
excited.
Any nerves in there?
No, definitely not.
Picked out the dress you like here?
Yeah, this is one of my favourites.
This is gorgeous. Wow, you got a lot to choose from here, don't you?
Yeah. I'm definitely having my dad give me away.
Yeah.
My dad's been an absolute gem through the whole of my life, so he's got to be there, he's got to give me away. Unfortunately, that's not the same with all of the family. I'm not going to be having my mum at my wedding.
No.
It got too much with my mum and her behaviour when she was drinking, so I've sort of put a stop to having any contact with her.
Even on a kind of big day like this, it's just gotten to a point where you just...
I can't have her there because it would just cause havoc on my wedding day.
And you want this to kind of be your...
It's my day,
Yeah.
or mine and Dan's day. So. Since teenager, really, I felt I've missed out on a hell of a lot. Normally girls will go shopping with their mums and, you know, do their hair together, do their nails. I've not had any of that. So it's just another situation where...
You're kind of missing out.
Yeah, I'm just missing out on all the things that a girl should be doing with her mum.
Like so many children of alcoholics, Danielle was the victim of her mother's violence when she was drunk.
When I was 18, we ended up having a bit of a row. And she stormed off. My mum was like, oh, that's it, I'm going to kill myself, I've had enough. And I was just saying, look, stop being ridiculous, and just kept putting my hands on her shoulders and sitting her back on her bed and saying, look, this is ridiculous. All of this is because you've had a drink, just calm down. And with that, she started kicking me and kicking me to the point that she dislocated this finger on my right hand, and she damaged the nerves and tendon in my little finger on the left hand.
Did you ever think, why did my mom choose alcohol over me? And have you come to terms with that now, that the situation you're in?
A lot of the time I used to think, oh, you know, why doesn't mum love me? Why won't she cuddle me? Is it something I've done? Is it me? And looking back now, it's like, well, no, it wasn't me. It was the alcohol talking a lot of the time. you've got to be strong and sort of stand your ground and just say that this is what's right for me now and this is where I'm going.
How did you know that it was time to move on?
It comes to a point where you have to realise that you can help someone as much as you can, and unless they really want to change, they're not going to. And unfortunately, Mum doesn't want to change at the moment, so I've got to just let her take her path.
And you take yours.
Yeah.
Like Danielle, I am one of nearly 3 million adults in the UK who grew up having one or both parents with an alcohol problem. My dad tried many times to give up drink, but even after his liver transplant, he somehow couldn't do it. Cloud's House is a residential rehab centre in Wiltshire. NHS and private clients have been coming here for 25 years. The team here understand addiction better than most, so maybe this is somewhere I can find some answers. Claire is head of treatment.
Hi Claire, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Shall we have a little look around the house?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
So here's the centre of the house. Everything's built around here, really.
How many people do you get through the doors a year?
It's about 300.
A massive step, obviously, is coming here in the first place.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. This is the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first step for people.
Right. So how many of people that come through the doors have families?
A fair majority, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, over half of the people here will have children at home who have been directly affected by their addiction. For every one person who is addicted, there's going to be at least 3 or 4 people connected to them who are affected by addiction on very much the same levels as the addict
That's
themselves.
quite a powerful fact, that, you know?
It is.
I think for every one addict, there's up to 3 or 4 people that it affects around them.
Yeah.
It just shows me, from what I'm learning, it's such a ripple effect.
Mm.
You know, you have the addict in the center, and then there's so many things that are there to help that addict, but you don't realize how many other people around this person are affected.
Shall we go and have a look at some other rooms
Yeah.
in the house? Oh, look at this. Somebody would have written this today.
Yeah.
So one of the attributes of love, like art, is to bring harmony and order out of chaos.
And someone wrote that on there today.
Yeah. That would be their thought for the day.
That's nice.
Do you want to put a thought for the day?
Yeah, I do, actually. I hope it kind of makes sense.
Every saint has a past. Every sinner has a future.
I'll leave my thought for the day.
Claire wanted to show me how addiction affects the family by drawing my family's genogram, which is like a family tree.
So, this is your father.
Yeah.
His name was George.
Yeah. Mother was Angela.
Mother is Angela. Do you have any other siblings?
No.
None at all?
Uh-uh.
Okay. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. You looked really strange then. What were you thinking?
What I'm thinking is that for somebody who is an only child of a family where there is alcoholism, is that quite a lot will land on you. You know, it's not shared around.
Yeah.
Sometimes if there's 2 or 3 children in the family, and some people will take up different positions and will soak up some of the distress, whereas if there's just one child in the family, you kind of get everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. I think about that too a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also, by its very nature, quite lonely.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. This is your grandmother, and she died.
She was a drinker.
Okay. So if I had a red pen, I would probably be putting an A here for addiction and an A here for addiction.
That's why I sometimes ask about the gene connection of the drinking, because I thought my dad was an alcoholic, my dad's mom was an alcoholic, and you know what, for all I know, a peer could have been the same, you know?
Yeah. People who are addicted often have ancestors who are addicted as well. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to end up with an A on here.
Yeah.
So that's the best relationship on the page?
Yeah, without a doubt.
So which is the worst relationship on the page?
The worst?
Or well, let's say more difficult. This is the easiest.
This one was the most
relationship.
difficult
Yeah.
that there was possibly, without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was tough. This was me trying my hardest, non-stop,
Yeah.
reaching, you know? Even, you know, and I knew it was there and I knew he wanted it, but the reality is he couldn't even show it because he was so, and all I knew about this was a third party. Like, he could have been married to alcohol. Like, that could be a marriage right there if there was booze, you know?
So I guess I'm thinking you didn't have
A father figure? No, I searched for it though. I wanted it, and I know he wanted it too. But the alcohol was so in him,
all-consuming.
he couldn't, you know. And I feel so horrible about that. But like I said, no, there's not much I can do about it.
And as much as you did, and as hard as you tried, you couldn't get through.
No. Yeah.
Claire has helped thousands of addicts over the years, and has also seen firsthand the impact their substance abuse has had on their children.
I have questions that I think I wish I'd asked my father this, or I wish that I knew these answers. And then sometimes today, before I got here, I was a bit nervous coming here to talk to you and ask you some of these questions, because I sometimes hit points where I go, you know, I don't care, it's too late, it's already happened. And I think these are all effects of maybe not having these answers back then, and that's why.
Or maybe not having the questions before.
You know?
As we talked, what Claire was saying began to affect me, and I told her more about my dad's drinking.
And I think this guilt would kick in, and he would just go on massive benders. I think the alcohol took over so much that it couldn't allow him to express how he really felt. Sorry, I gotta have a look at this because I want to ask you some questions about children, if you don't mind.
I mean, I think it's interesting that you should say that, because that's a story that we hear many, many times. You know, it sounds very sad to me that happened. You know, it seems as though what he was probably doing was, you know, feeling very anxious and nervous about seeing you, and used a kind of stress-reducing behaviour, which is to, you know, get drunk, which actually invokes stress.
Yeah, on everybody around him.
Exactly.
But it's good now that I'm talking about it. But like I said, it's so off and on. There's anger there within me, and then there's sometimes guilt.
Why wouldn't you be angry there?
Yeah, I know, but then I think, why am I angry? What am I don't know.
Well, what you're describing is that kind of being let down, and in any normal situation, if we were let down, we might feel angry.
Yeah.
But I think when we're faced with somebody who really we know is unwell, and they're letting us down because they're unwell, we feel guilty because we feel angry.
Yeah.
I tried to get back to my questions.
What are the big impacts on children growing up that have parents that are addicts?
Well, I mean, in some ways you could answer that question.
I know.
Couldn't you?
I want to.
But I mean, it's got to be to do with relationships, hasn't it? You will have been affected by the relationship that you had with him then, and I guess that will affect the way that you go about having relationships.
Well, you've just hit a very, very close note to me, because I sometimes wonder, and this is difficult for me to say this, but I have real commitment issues in relationships. Do you think that, just from your opinion, do you think that has anything to do?
Strike a chord with me, yes. Because, you know, alcohol turns relationships on its head.
Yeah.
You know, there's that kind of thing when children or partners or parents may feel when the person who is doing the using or drinking is choosing the alcohol or drugs over them.
That was a big battle I had as well, thinking, as my father chose alcohol over me, you know.
And can you imagine how that might make you feel about yourself?
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah, good. It just gets me thinking. I'm all right, thank you. Sorry. It's funny, before I sat down with you, I thought, nah, you know, I could take it. 4 years later, Dad's passed away, it's all right, but, you know, that's my stubbornness. I didn't think I'd actually... Just 1 second. I find myself a lot saying, all right, laugh about it because you won't cry, you know? It's funny too, because before I sat down, I text my mother and I was like, you know what, today I can't be asked, you know, I can't really be bothered. She goes, you know what, probably because you got so much underlying hatred, you know? Sorry. And there's a lot of hate.
You see, the thing is, Calum, it's not your fault, you know.
Yeah, I know it's not, but fuck. It's just shit, it's too late. But it's life, you know, these things happen.
It's not too late for you to deal with how you feel about things.
Yeah, no. My head just turns into a wreck sometimes. I think, all right, get on with it, you know, it's closure. My dad's past, deal with it, move on. But these things affect you no matter what, no matter how long down the line, you know. It's hardcore.
Well, there's nobody who's got a sort of rule book on closure on how long it's going to take you to...
Yeah, but I just wonder if it comes, you know?
Yeah, it does come.
Yeah.
For sure. But you see, only if you can do this, really, is find a way to talk about things. I don't think that anybody, when they start to drink, has an ambition to become an alcoholic. He may not have known he had a choice. He may have been too ill, too unwell, that he had lost sight of the fact that he had a choice.
It's pretty clear to me now that if you can't address things when you're young, they don't just go away. In order to feel better, you have to talk about it.
At least now I've found out that I can make that step, and it will make me feel better when I talk about it. It's just when I'm kind of ready and willing and able. I'll always marry the two, you know? I'll always marry George Best the footballer and George Best my dad who drank, because it is one big package.
It doesn't mean my dad didn't love me, and I still feel blessed to be my father's son.
It's just time for me to move on with my life, and I'm glad I started addressing some of these issues that have probably been really affecting me for the past 28 years. And they have, for sure. But now I know that, and I always knew that, but I never really wanted to accept it or face it, and this has helped me do that.
I've been roaming around, always looking down at all I see. Painted faces fill the places I can't reach. You know that I could use somebody.
Yeah, that was from my old man.